Hello and welcome back to H-Way Book Reviews. Today I have a bit of an interesting book published just 5 odd years ago now by a fellow YouTuber, Exerbia. The I in that is actually a 1. I hope it's pronounced Exerbia. If not, deal with it. I don't care. Before even saying anything about this book, The Fifth Science, the channel itself is one I highly enjoy and definitely recommend. I would especially recommend this channel to anyone that knows me even a little personally, or my own book, The 11th Hour, as my own work shares many similarities to the content that Exerbia covers, as do my interests. Another thing of note, there's something a little special going on. Currently my every move and word is being watched. I now know what it is like to have a supervisor. You can say hi if you want.
Hello.
I don't know if the mic picked up at all, but maybe we'll see. Yeah, hi, good, okay. So if I make any mistakes, which I know I will, I'm not gonna hear the end of this. So enjoy keeping that knowledge in the back of your head as we go forward. My chair is actually currently slowly falling down. This is gonna be a long video. All right, fix that at all? Maybe. No. Cool. No. The book itself, the reason you're probably here, unless you just like me that much, is an anthology of 12 stories, as well as an introduction, a brief timeline, and a final chapter called Notes on Why Stuff Got Written. All in all, with an introduction starting at page 7, the book then goes to page 333, with the actual anthology part of the book running from page 15 to 326. A fairly hefty book with a good amount of words per page. Hopefully you can actually see this. I have literally no idea if the camera focuses anytime I do this. And I really don't bother to check in editing, I'm gonna be honest. It is about the size of a typical paperback, the likes of like Percy Jackson or The Menagerie, that standard sort of size. And let me just say, I like the style a lot more than the cover of those books. It has a matte finish. Is it matte? I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't care, but I like it. The story itself follows the history of the galactic human empire spanning some 100,000 years into the future. But that's not the full picture. These stories, although set at different parts and all definitely important to the narrative of the empire, its rise and its fall, are generally unrelated, isolated. They are not about the history, they are the history. The stories are simply stories set in the Empire, displaying events and characters as they were. And, of course, it all revolves around the Fifth Science. What is the Fifth Science? It is explained on the blurb for sure, and elsewhere in the book I believe, that humanity's empire was founded on 4 sciences. Those being, and I quote, logic, physics, psychology, and sociology. The fifth science doomed it all, the fifth science of consciousness. And that sets the tone of the book pretty well. This book is an exercise in thought above all. It asks the reader, and often the characters, many complex questions and doesn't provide many answers. The few answers it gives raises even more questions. There are many good examples. This book is chock full of inquisitive questions, philosophical ponderings, and damn good quotes. To name a few, there are these paragraphs on page 38. In all things, across all avenues, a choice must be made. Whether to follow love, truth, or power. That choice will consume the chooser. If he follows only love, then his well-being will be constantly at the mercy of another, though his highs will be sublime. If he follows truth, then it will be a lonely journey, but potentially a noble one. If he should follow power, though, not only will he come to know a desperate and revolting loneliness, but he will also never experience even a drop of satisfaction in anything. And this on pages 76 and 77, if I could find it in a timely manner. Youth breeds a certain self-preservation instinct. It is understood on some primal level that one's whole life is ahead, and death or disfigurement now will result in decades of life unlived. At my age, another feeling sets in. One knows life will be over soon, that the body will revert to little more than dust and a story. Then only a story, then an old story, then a nothing. That tends to nip most fears in the bud. Aging is backwards. One begins in sometimes, perfect health, and with absolutely no idea what to use it for. The world is strange, and its mechanisms are strange. Meaning is in short supply, and distractions are everywhere. Then one begins to learn who they actually are, noticing there are passions and proclivities buried down inside and can be teased out. There is a meaning after all, and it swims leisurely into focus as the years wander past. And finally, when one knows what it is they are looking for in a lover, in a career, in a house or a book, the body is beginning to fail. The spine begins to ache. The legs seize up after too long sat down and seize up after too long standing. The mind is full of information now, but whatever strange search algorithm retrieves the information is as slow and geriatric as the mind it fetches information for. I fear that on my last day, on my deathbed, that is when the meaning of things will enter the room and kiss my forehead and whisper into my ear what it is I should have done with my life, and how I should have conducted myself. Hell isn't a fire pit, but a museum of regrets. And here on page 316, again I have to go and find it. Where is it? Oh, I need to actually find the paragraphs. As far as I'm aware, there has never been a point in history when a village, a society, or a planet has come together for a day and said, "What is it we're all going after?" There has never been a vote about a collective purpose. Either a whole society is subject to the dictates of one mad ruler who imposes their vision on the whole, or the society is self-driven and strives after its own ends individually among the whole. Why is there never an objective? And now I think about it, if there were, what would it even be? The answer is perhaps the same for us here at the end of history as it was for our ancestors millions of years ago at the beginning. To live well, to live quietly, and to die without too much of a fuss. And if we are very, very lucky, to love properly at least once. Or what about here on page 101? What a time, parent and child in rapturous union, foraging into the world together, silicon and flesh as comrades. Minds designed the nails and the makers banged them in. Structures grew so tall they poked from the mother planet's atmosphere. Nature was tamed to a degree. Original sin was banished and the garden was partly reconstructed and all were welcome to partake in the fruit of the trees, mind or man. Need I tell you that the fruit was good? You have no idea how tempting it is just to read whole chapters at a time. And one of the reasons for that is the other content of the book, the actual stories, the plots, the characters that inhabit it. This book is not just philosophy. The stories in it are enthralling with the depth and breadth uncommon for philosophical fantasy. The world is believable as much as it needs to be. The people are real, the plots are interesting and a joy to explore. And that's not all. Going with everything else and not only not breaking any part of the book, but somehow augmenting it, is comedy. The book is funny, very funny actually. The humor typically comes from a juxtaposition of these deep ruminations of the nature of man and mind and the like, and then some ordinary or silly even statement or observation. And yet they don't detract at all from the titular ruminations, and instead add to them, as though proving a point about the absurdity of it all, a very common theme. Let me read you a page or so from near the end, if I could find it, obviously. It is difficult to find it. Not in my ears, but in my head her voice said, "We'll all go for lunch together." A scene appeared before me in my mind's eye. A sunset, a valley somewhere. It had the feeling of Christmas, of total safety. A table was being set by an old woman and an old man. The woman was tall and pale with the spheres floating at her side. The man was quiet in a thoughtful manner, careful eyes. A young girl brought cutlery from the house. Then they all sat and ate, and nothing was painful or strange, nor seemed like it would end. The young girl looked out at the sunset and forgot to eat a while. I knew in the way one understands the context of a dream that the young girl was Lysithea, that these were her parents. Nothing had an edge to it, not for little Lysithea, not for her mother and father. "I hope it's like this when I go in," Lysithea said. "Me too." We stayed as statues for a while. I promised myself I'd be good in her name, and in the name of all the things that had come before. Now, almost everything in the world was dead, and there was a last little living fragment that we had to coddle in our cupped hands and just hope it held out. This is a terrible end, all of it, she whispered. We don't know that yet. Please just come when you're ready. I will, I promise. She stepped back. I'll see you, she said. I'll see you. She set off for the house. I watched her shrinking into the distance for a while. I turned back to the Starship graveyard. Yes, I would buy some cigarettes. Yes, I would drink with the men and women at the bar. Yes, I would race boxcars with the other vagrants. And when the meaning fell right out of the bottom of the thing, when everything was old ash, on that very same day, I would go find the fifth boy again and join Lysithea. She wouldn't have aged. I wouldn't age after that either. We'd remember our species together. We'd remember our empire. We'd forget the ills of old. We'd talk about the meaning of things. We'd give ourselves over to the marching drumbeat of infinite history. We'd live in a constant summer afternoon of abstractions. And sure, then we'd have lunch. It's things like that, sprinkled all throughout the book, that really showcase, for one, the scale of the thought experiments it plays, and then how aptly it can juxtapose something like, sure, then we'll have lunch after all of that, right after. And to me, at the very least, it definitely makes it a lot better to showcase the absurdity of it all, and yet it doesn't take away its meaning. Though, for all my praise, the book is not without its downsides. The anthology nature of the work leaves much to be desired by way of story, and major gaps are left unanswered that leaves many readers, myself included, wanting. The best example is in the first story, though I won't say much about what it is exactly to avoid spoilers, but it raises many questions, and unlike the philosophies, these are not questions asked of the reader, but rather questions about the world that has been set up that are then unanswered, and there can be no answer. The world it built is now unknown, and while that very well may be intentional, and very well may have its own strengths too, and many people very well may enjoy that aspect, to me it detracts from the stories. The philosophies are also left wanting, for me at least. There is nothing inherently wrong with them. The issue is that they are not quite explored enough. There are 1,000 questions raised about 1,000 topics, but that spread-thin nature of it all, while very impressive in scope, and the questions are still valuable and fun to ask, waters it down of sorts. The stories simply are not long enough to ask 1,000 questions about one topic. But for all of that, the critiques still point to the strengths this book has. The flaws within it generally stem from wanting more of what makes it good. And as far as problems go, that is a great problem to have. I would much rather read a book that leaves me satisfied but not satiated than a book that leaves me hungry for anything of substance. And one of the most prevalent thoughts I had while writing this review was that I need to read this book again. Certainly, I myself have changed much since I last read it, and I will be able to answer the questions in new, maybe even better ways. Plus, it's just good, very easy to read, and fun to read at that. Now, until I read it again, this book, for me, sits at around an 8.2 out of 10, but I expect that number to increase. Something I had been considering for a while now was to, every now and then, create a very in-depth review of the work, containing spoilers so that I can talk about everything that happens. This idea, if I go through with it, would be on books I had previously reviewed, so people's first introduction doesn't spill all the beans right away. I think that this book would be the perfect candidate for that, but that's all for the future. Right now, you should try reading this book, see what you think about it. I highly recommend it. And I'll be back next week with another book and another review. This has been 828 Book Reviews, and keep on reading. And to quote Exerbia here, so please go take a walk. I hope it's a nice one. And let's not waste our day out in the cosmos. Want to say goodbye?
Bye.
I still don't know if they could hear that at all. We're gonna find out.